Have you ever wondered if you're really alone at night? When the room is quiet, the ceiling is dark, and you're curled up in your familiar bed, feeling completely safe, then somewhere below you, in the space you've never really checked, something is silently watching. We often tell ourselves that noises are caused by drafts, that creaking floors are normal in old houses. But what if they're not? What if every rustle you hear every night is fingernails, not mice? What if that sudden chill to your heels is a hand trying to touch you? In the final installment of the Iceberg Encounter series, we invite you to enter a chilling true story sent to you anonymously. She doesn't name her name. She doesn't ask for help. She just wants to be heard. And perhaps after you hear this story, you won't dare to let your feet out from under the covers again. The Arms Under the Bed is not simply a young girl's chilling experience. It is a reflection of the most primal fear of human beings, the fear of being pulled into the darkness by something we cannot see, cannot name, and cannot stop. If you love unsolved mysteries, strange disappearances, unexplained supernatural phenomena, and conspiracy theories hidden in the dark, then you're in the right place. This is Darkness Tells, where forgotten stories are rekindled through whispers. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories in the Iceberg Encounter series. If you've ever experienced an unexplainable phenomenon, or felt the presence of something when no one was there, leave a comment below. Who knows, you might not be the only one. Now, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and make sure there's nothing under your bed today. Are you ready? There were moments when all the laws of nature seemed to be bent, not by magic, but by something ancient, something monstrous, lurking at the edge of consciousness. And that morning, when I woke up to sunlight streaming through the misty windows, I knew I was no longer alone in this house. The living room was so cold I could see my breath rising like a thin wisp of smoke. On the table was a pile of ash that looked like salt, though I was sure I had wiped it clean last night. I walked over to the wall clock. The hand was still at 3:33. I reached out and turned it. It didn't budge. Strangest of all, the back of the clock was singed in one corner, black as if it had been licked by fire. But there was no smell of burning, no sound, no explanation. I was about to go upstairs to get my things and leave. My body was telling me to run away from this place, but part of my mind was thinking, if I leave now, it will follow. And then I stopped. At the end of the hallway leading to the backyard, the thin white curtain was swaying. It wasn't the wind. All the windows were closed. No currents could move it. And it wasn't swaying like it normally would. It was rising and falling, as if someone was breathing softly from behind. A beat, a pause, then a deep breath, as if releasing a memory. I didn't want to get closer. I didn't want to see what was behind it. But my body kept moving. It was like a chain was wrapped around my chest, pulling me forward. My fingertips were trembling as I reached out. As soon as I touched the fabric, bam! A loud bang from the kitchen sent me flying backwards. The curtain flew open. No one. But on the floor, a circle of ash, and in the middle of it, a scorched handprint. I turned sharply, my eyes meeting the mirror on the wall, and I froze. I was looking at myself, but not me. The woman in the mirror had ash-colored hair, matted with moisture, eyes without whites, just deep black holes, and a mouth that was smiling. Not a happy smile, but the smile of someone who knew something was about to happen and accepted it. I turned my head. No one was behind me. I turned back to the mirror. She was still there, but her hand had lifted and was tapping the mirror. Clank, clack, clack. I ran upstairs. My heart was pounding in my chest. I rushed into her bedroom, slammed the door, locked it, but the door wouldn't close, as if Something was clamping my hand in the crack of the door. I pulled hard and heard a bang. The door closed, but blood, fresh blood, seeped through the crack of the wood, dripping steadily onto the floor. Drip, 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 drip. I turned back into the room. The mirror on her dressing table was covered in ash. I stepped closer. I wiped a part of the glass with my hand, and I saw no reflection, no me, no furniture, just a completely different scene, an identical room, but with a woman sitting there writing in her diary. I tried to read the words on the page and gasped. The handwriting was mine. The page read, Day 13. I am no longer Marika. This memory is overwhelming me. I screamed. I smashed the mirror. Shards of glass fell like black snow. A soft whisper passed by my right ear. She was your sister. She didn't make it. I turned around. No one was there, but the curtains in the corner of the room were spinning slightly. There was a smell in the air, burning flesh and burning hair. I hid in the corner of the room, pulled out my phone to shine. The flashlight flickered as if it was in a mess, and then it shone on something standing behind the glass cabinet. A human shadow, tall, slender, arms twice as long as usual, head tilted at an unnatural angle. Its eyes looked like mine, but empty. I didn't know if I was screaming or holding my breath. All I knew was that when I backed away, it didn't move forward. It reached out, drawing a 13 on the ash on the floor. The sound of chains dragging came from downstairs, dragging slowly, as if someone was carrying the burden of imprisoned memories. And then, the wind chimes rang in my head, like pieces of metal clanging against each other inside my skull. Not a real sound, but still clear. Marika, the voice rang again, this time right next to my ear. I turned around. My mother, the one who had died in the fire, was standing there, smoking all over, her skin cracked like rotten wood, her mouth curled not in a smile, but in a slash across her face. I choked. My hand clenched the rosary, but it fell from her hand, as if pushed away. My mother didn't move forward. She just looked at me and said, It's your turn. Don't forget. Don't tell it wrong. The door shook with a clack, clack, clack. I pushed the cupboard against the door, but the wall in front of me began to bleed. Blood seeped from the cracks in the bricks like sweat. Then it suddenly condensed into words. The future cannot be rewritten. Memories must continue. I jumped up, rushed down the stairs. But halfway down the stairs, everything changed color. The walls turned to burnt wood. Family photos fell from their frames, each face distorted, except mine. My face in the photo began to turn toward me, mouth opened, and said, You opened the mirror. You remembered. You must tell. There's a truth no one wants to face, that maybe the memories you're living through aren't yours. I realized this as I turned her attic upside down. At the end of the room, behind a moldy wall, was an old safe locked with black chains and a rusty padlock. No key, no combinations, but it opened, as if it knew I was coming. Inside were old notebooks, the smell of burnt paper as if they had just been dug out of a fire. Each one had a name and a date of death. Eloise, 1992. Clara, 1921. Anouk, 1959. Celine, 1975. Marika, 1997. I felt like I was falling into a deep hole. I'm Marika, born in 1997. So why is my name at the end with a slash? I opened the last notebook. The handwriting wasn't mine, but the letters were exactly the same as I wrote every day. Day 1, I dreamed that I was walking in the ash forest. Day 3, The mirror no longer reflected. Day 5, I saw a girl wearing a dress like mine. She said, I am the last one who remembers. Day 7, I saw myself writing this diary, but I couldn't control my hand. I didn't dare read any further. Cold sweat ran down my spine. A gust of wind blew from nowhere, causing all the pages to flip like crazy paper birds. Crack! The sound rang out. I looked to my left, started. The iron door of the safe just slammed shut, and the chains started to screech across the wooden floor. I ran out of the attic. My heart was pounding in my chest like a drum. I rushed downstairs, where everything was still eerily silent. But I feel the change. On the wall of the hallway, all the family photos had changed faces. All the photos, from children to adults, had my face. Not the same, but my face, every detail, every expression, every look. I rushed into the living room. The wall clock suddenly rang. Tick, tock, 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 and then stopped. The hands pointed to 1:13 p.m. I looked up at the mirror hanging over the fireplace and gasped. It no longer reflects the living room. It was a dark hallway with girls in ash dresses standing in long rows, all facing me. Each one speaks, in my voice. I am Celine. I was you. I am Clara. I remember my death. I am Marika, but not you. I am the remains of you being rewritten. I burst, screamed. I am me. I am not you. The mirror began to crack. Blood ran from the edge of the glass. Crimson streaks. On the glass, a sentence appears as if etched into the glass. Those who remember too much become someone else's memory. Bam! The window burst open. A black wind rushed in, a wind that carried not dust, but the sound of muffled laughter, the sound of chains dragging, and the sound of children crying silently in the darkness. On her cheek, a scar burned up from her neck. I was you when you died the first time, it whined. You are living for the 13th time. I backed away, but behind me, a cold, thin arm rested on my shoulder. I turned around. No one was there, but the mirror in the room was facing me, even though it was against the wall. On the glass, not me, but a half-burned face, smiling crookedly, a diary in hand, blood seeping from the lines. The light went out. Darkness swallowed all my senses. Then from somewhere, right in my ear, a voice whispered, if you forget, you live. If you remember, you will write again. But if you tell, click. The door knocked 3 times. You will become part of the mirror. I collapsed. The door behind me opened softly as if it had never been locked. I dragged myself into the hallway. All the rooms in the house were now locked with chains. Each lock has the words, remembered. I walk through the kitchen. Ashes are rising from the floor, swirling in a circle. I touch it, and it burns me. The number 13 is imprinted on my hand. Footsteps come from the basement. Slowly, dragging, thump, thump, pull the chain, thump. I stand up, walk to the door. Flashlight flickers. The stairs are damp. The smell of burnt flesh mingles with old paper and dried lavender. I go down, and at the end of the basement, a round table on which are 12 notebooks. Seat number 13, empty. On the table is a pen and paper. I see my own handwriting. If you continue writing, you will no longer be a witness. You will be a teller. I heard footsteps approaching from behind, but I didn't turn around. For the first time, I understood. I couldn't escape. I could only choose to be remembered, or choose to disappear like them. I picked up my pen and began to write. Day 13. I was Marika. Now I have the 13th memory. There are numbers we only hear about, but when we actually live through them, we understand the coldness they carry. 13. No longer a number, but a fateful day, when every door in the old house began to close, one by one, locking memories inside. With me, I woke up with the taste of blood in my mouth. My throat burned. My hands clutched my chest as if every breath was being squeezed out. All around me was no longer my grandmother's bedroom. It was the basement. I was lying right in the middle of the round table, where 12 diaries were arranged in a semicircle. The 13th seat was still empty, but this time there was an additional object on the table, a black ash key, engraved with the number 13. Before I could touch it, the floor shook. Boom! A loud banging sound came from above. Something or someone was moving very quickly in the house above. Drag, clop, clop, clop. I rushed to the stairs, but the basement door had disappeared. In its place was a black mirror wall, taking up the entire space, reflecting me in a different angle. In the mirror, I was smiling. My eyes were bloodshot. My mouth was mumbling something indistinct. Then suddenly, the me in the mirror turned around, reached out to touch the glass. I felt a chill creep up my skin. From the other side, I could no longer retreat. I could not hide. On the table now, the 13th notebook opened by itself. The words appeared as if written by an invisible hand. To remember, one must rewrite. To survive, one must face. I wrote tremblingly on the first page. The 13th day, I no longer believe I am one. The moment the pen touched the paper, the room collapsed. Not real, it felt like it. Space twisted as if it were being sucked into the center of the round table. I was thrown into a dark area where only a whisper echoed. You've opened too much. Now they'll all open again, at once. A flash of light. I stood in the middle of a long hallway lined with mirrors, where each mirror reflected a different version of me. People were burning, people were hanging, people were screaming. All of them were speaking at once. Marika, Marika, you think you're different from us? At the end of the hallway was a door engraved with the number 13. The black ash key in my hand was hot. I inserted the key. The door swung open. Inside was an ancient ritual room, covered in symbols, dried blood, and muddy footprints. In the center was a circle of burnt ash, and a human skin scripture was open. I stepped forward. The words in the book began to dance. Memory is a living thing. It feeds on fear. To escape, you must strip away what you fear most. I sat in the circle of ashes. I bit my hand, letting the blood drip into my vagina. The air cracked like cracked glass. Arms began to crawl out from the walls. Face after face appeared. Mine. But the eyes were empty. They crawled towards me, not crying, just laughing. A being of ash and congealed blood appeared in the middle of the room. It was humanoid, but misshapen. The arms were too long. The eyes were black holes. Its mouth was open to its neck, hissing with the breath of 1,000 whispers. Every time someone forgets, I live more. Every time you remember, a part of you dies. I could no longer run. I screamed, Elara, where are you? And suddenly, everything went silent. In the darkness, my sister appeared. No longer the little girl burning in the night, but a shining silhouette, eyes as warm as before. You never left. It's just that I dare not remember. The room was bright. Ashes dissolved. The entity began to fall in pieces, screaming in its final rage. I rushed forward, hugging Elara. I said, I will keep this memory, even if it kills me. She nodded. Then, I will be the last one to remember. I opened my eyes. I was lying in the middle of the cellar, alone. The 13th notebook was already filled with words. The last line read, I choose to keep a door, not to escape, but to warn the next person. Memory walks. If you forget it, it will come back for you. If you've ever stared into a mirror for too long, there's a moment, a tiny one, when you feel the image in the mirror blink at you, just for a split second. But that feeling, once it appears, never leaves your mind. And I am living in that moment. After writing the last page of my 13th diary, I thought I was done. I was wrong. When I opened my eyes, I found myself no longer in the basement. No ash, no darkness, no sound of chains. But my bed, my room, sunlight streaming through the curtains like a peaceful morning. The house was whole again. My grandmother was in the kitchen. The smell of fried eggs filled the air as if death had never happened. Marika, are you awake? Dreaming again? I stood frozen in the doorway. She was alive, eyes sparkling, smile warm, voice so familiar it chokes. But something is wrong. There is a strand of burnt hair on my plate of eggs. I pulled it out. One, two, then a handful. The room is dark. When I look back, her face has lengthened as if pulled from within. The smile doesn't disappear. It just stretches all the way to her ears. Eat. Memories need to be maintained. I run upstairs. My room, the same. But on the table, the diary is still unfinished. The last page is waiting. A line appears, slowly. Day 14. You think you're finished, but in fact, you've just begun. I turn the mirror over. The reflection is gone. Instead, I see myself sitting there writing, but my hand doesn't move. The person in the mirror is still writing, still smiling, still whispering. They are reading about you, Marika. They are telling stories. I panicked. I was no longer the narrator. I was being rewritten. The door to the room opened alone. Outside was no longer the familiar hallway. Instead was an endless hallway filled with mirrors. Each mirror was another life of mine. I lived in the forest, worshiping the fire entity. I was a nurse, cutting memories of the living to keep myself sane. I was a young woman who hung herself in the middle of the night because she could not bear the whispers. I was the one who imprisoned Elara, burned her, and convinced myself that I had tried to save her. Each image was different, but each eye turned to look at me and whispered at the same time, Marika, you are no longer alone. At the end of the hallway was a red door closed. A sign hung, Writer's Office, no admittance except for writers. I pushed the door open. Inside was a round room full of paper. On each page were different endings to my life. Marika died remembering Elara. Marika's soul was chained to the notebook. Marika mistold the ritual, opening the gate for the entity to enter. Marika was replaced by another narrator. In the center of the room was a man in a black cloak, his face bandaged, writing. I whispered, Who gave you permission to write about me? Who gave you the right to choose the ending? The man didn't answer. I moved closer, snatched the pen from his hand. He raised his head, no face, just a black hole, deep, where the wind howled like it was 1,000 years ago. I backed away. He stood up, held out his hand to me, and I was instantly pulled into the wall of paper. The pages spun around me. The paper turned to the mirror. The mirror turned to smoke. I no longer knew who I was. A final line appeared, carved into my hand like a scar. If you want to be a writer again, you must erase everything that came before. I screamed. No, I am the last one who remembers. I chose memory. A whirlwind rose. Paper stores, mirrors shattered, memories scattered like pieces of a torn soul. An entity rose from the floor, Elara, but it was no longer my sister. It was a distorted version of Elira's memory. Burning eyes, ash-streaked hair, a hand pointed at me. You let me die. You wrote it wrong. You told the ritual wrong. I knelt, pulled the knife from the secret compartment on my thigh, raised it to my palm. If you must pay, let me be the one to rewrite the first line. My blood dripped onto the paper. The first page was white, and a new sentence appeared. I was once a character. Now I am a narrator. And this time, I will not forget that I have a choice. The room was bright. I woke up on the round table in the basement, the 13th notebook closed. On the back cover, engraved a line. If you open this notebook, remember, you are writing to yourself. I used to think the greatest fear was being forgotten. But what chilled my heart even more was knowing that even if you remember, the memory might not be yours anymore. I woke up. It was dim light again. But this time, there was no dust, no diary pages. I was lying in the middle of a room with no doors, no walls, just mirrors, hundreds, thousands of them, put together into a giant sphere reflecting nothing. I wasn't there. I walked up to one of the mirrors. No people, no shadows, just a blank surface. I tried waving, no response. I tried whispering, "Is anyone there?" At that moment, the mirror rippled, and a face appeared. It was me, but no eyes, mouth sewn shut. There was a deep gash in my neck that reached all the way to my collarbone, the blood coagulating into a black streak. I backed away, slamming my back into another mirror. The mirror shattered, and from within it, a hand emerged. Not a human hand. It was slender, long, the skin like burned paper, the nails black and trembling as if searching for me. I screamed. The echoes echoed throughout the sphere, but not with my ears, but with my bones. Pain, aching, like being hit with a sledgehammer from inside my skull. The mirrors began to change. Each mirror reflected a different version of Marika. One was hanged. One was burned alive. One was writing, but the writing was blood dripping from his eyes. One was ash. Only his eyes remained in the mirror. I began to understand. I was no longer the only one writing this story. I was one of thousands. Then I saw her. In the center of the mirror, a little girl sat cross-legged, her hair tangled over her face, playing with the broken pieces of glass. She wasn't Elara, but she looked strangely like her, if Elara had survived. I whispered, "Elara, is that you?" She raised her head. Her face was blank, empty. Then, from the palm of her hand, she took my face, like a mask, and put it on. When she opened her eyes, they were my eyes. When she smiled, they were my smile. But longer, wrong, as if acting out a memory she didn't belong to. She came forward, took my hand, cold. The voice came, not from my mouth, but from behind my neck, as if someone were leaning close to my neck and whispering, "You never really remembered, Elara. You only remembered what you needed to survive." I froze. She pulled me toward the center of the sphere. There was the largest mirror, black and frameless, and there I saw myself writing. I, in the mirror, sat in front of the 13th notebook, but I, in real life, was trembling, not writing anything. "Who is she?" I asked. "The last one," the voice echoed from the other mirrors. "She told the truth, and you only told what you could bear." I screamed, "I am the one who wrote. I kept the memories. I lived through all the layers of the ritual." The main mirror cracked. From that crack, something seeped out. Not blood, but ink. Black ink. Slimy. Smelling of burned memories. I backed away. But it was too late. A hand emerged, pulling me through the mirror. I fell into a spiraling hallway. On the walls were thousands of handwritten pages. Each page read, "Marika version number 31, failed. Marika version number 76, replaced. Marika version number 102, stopped reflecting." Marika version number 199. Beginning to know I am not real, I screamed. The whirlwind peeled layers of memories off me like skin. I fell to the floor, surrounded by 12 diaries, all of them blank, and the 13th opened before me. The words appeared slowly. If you are really the writer, write down your first memory. But this time, no lies. I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking. I wrote, I let Elara die. I locked the door. I was scared, and I ran. A cold chill ran down my spine. The mirrors around the room shook violently. A door slowly opened behind me. There was nothing inside but darkness. I stepped in, and the light from a small candle flickered. In the middle of the room was a cradle. In the cradle, Elara. It was really her. Eyes closed, skin is rosy, breathing evenly. I collapsed. Tears fell into puddles. I'm sorry, I didn't run this time. I picked her up. At that moment, I was no longer afraid, but the next second, my hand started to burn. Elara turned to ash. In my hand, there was only a small red diary sewn with real hair. I opened it, just one line. If you dare to remember, tell me, but never write it wrong again. I woke up for the last time. My back was on the ash floor. The house was burned. There was no one left, no mirror, just me and the red diary. I walked into the night step by step. The question still echoed in my head. If all these are rewritten memories, then did I ever really exist? I have passed through fire, through mirrors, through false dreams that I once believed to be true. I once thought, as long as I kept my memories, I would be the last writer for myself. But I was wrong. I was just a rereader of a manuscript that was never written by my own hand. When I opened my eyes, I was in a place I had never dared to imagine. A library of ash. Not ordinary ash, but the ash of memories. The sky above me was a black dome, no light, only the flickering of red chains hanging, each connected to a half-burned diary. I walked down the corridor of bookshelves that curved like snake spines. All were labeled Marika, Manuscript 1, Marika, Manuscript 42, Marika, Manuscript 159. I saw the closest one, Marika, Manuscript 263, interrupted. I shivered. Who was writing me? And why was I always interrupted? I turned around. A white bone door opened silently. Inside was a round room. In the middle, a writing desk. And there sat a person in a black scarf, his hands trembling as he wrote the last line. I stepped closer. The cold air was like water flowing back through my veins. When I looked down at the notebook, I saw Marika entered the room, frightened but unaware that she was the next writer. The person sitting there turned around. There was no face. It was just a concave mirror, inside of which my face was slowly cracking. I screamed, "No, I'm not a copy. I'm real." A laugh rang out from all directions, a laugh that was choking on blood. The mirror cracked, and from it stepped a being, not human, not demon. It had the shape of Elara, but it was no longer my sister. Its eyes were hollow, its hair burned, its skin covered in writing. With each step it took, memories fell from me like broken glass. You once wrote me down as dead. Now you write me down as someone who never lived. I stepped back. A red notebook appeared in my hand, a new one, unwritten. An ash brush appeared from nowhere. A voice from deep within my heart said, "If you want to end, write. But don't write to live. Write to take responsibility." I opened the notebook. My hands shook with electric shocks. I wrote, I, Marika, was the one who locked the door when Elara was inside. I hid. I rewrote my memories so I wouldn't have to remember the truth. The room shook. Pages flew around like crows. Each page had a Marika face, all reproachful. You are a liar. You are a coward. You deserve to be erased. I screamed, I know. I looked up at the Elara being. You died because of me, but you will live again with the right memory. I continued writing. Elira does not forgive, but you deserve to be remembered correctly. The being walked slowly towards me. I did not run. I handed it the red book. It took it, opened it, and read. Its whole body lit up, not with light, but with the moment of memory resurrecting. A low boom came from its chest. Ashes fell. The wind died down. And for a moment, I saw Elira again. It was really Elira, the little girl from years ago, smiling softly. For the first time, you're telling the truth. Then she disappeared. No sound, no pain, just her role had been fulfilled. I fell to the floor. In my hands was the last diary, now locked with red thread and unable to be opened again. A single line was printed on the cover. The last writer does not need to live. Just remember. I walked out of the ash room. The sky outside turned ash pink, like both sunrise and sunset. There was no corridor, no chain. There was only an ash path leading out of memory. I followed that path forever, until I came to one last mirror. This mirror did not reflect me. It reflected a stranger reading this story. That person was you. You, holding my story, flipping through my memories for fun, for curiosity, for trembling. I looked at you, through the mirror, and asked, will you tell? Or will you remain silent, as I should have done from the beginning? If each reader holds a part of the memory, who then holds the whole truth? And if no one remembers correctly, I will never exist. I woke up in a white space. No floor, no ceiling, just dim light and the sound of pages turning like wind without wind. I didn't know who I was, for the first time in a long time. Not because I had forgotten, but because too many people were remembering me wrongly. A whisper rang out, as if echoing from the invisible walls around me. You are in the after-telling zone, where stories that don't end properly begin to drift. I turned around. No one. But from the dim sky, thousands of diaries fell slowly like ash. They did not touch the ground, but hovered around me, each with my name, but no two were the same. Marika, 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 Malika, Marika. Every person who has read your story has told it, from memory, from emotion, from fear, and each of those wrong words creates a new version. I was stunned. I reached out and touched the nearest notebook. It was open as if it had been waiting for me all along. In this version, Marika never saved Elara. She tells it to console herself. Elara never forgave. The page burned itself, not with fire, but with my gaze. I screamed. I wrote it right. I made amends. Another book opens. In this version, Marika is the ash entity. She only remembers being the narrator, but in reality, she is a memory forced to live. The words kept appearing, like a knife cutting into me, with possibilities I didn't dare to think of. I knelt down in the middle of the whirlwind of papers. I understood. I no longer had ownership of my story, because I had given it to the reader. A cold air swept by, and in front of me a circle of mirrors appeared. 13 panels corresponding to 13 parts of the story, but each panel reflected a different person. The first panel, a boy listening to a podcast, face tense, headphones in as it was past midnight. The second panel, a girl retelling the story to her friend, adding details to make it more flavorful. The third panel, a YouTuber editing the story into Top 10 Most Haunting Ghost Stories. The fourth panel, an AI relearning the writing style to create similar content. The fifth panel? It was you. Yes, you. The person reading this story right now. I touched the mirror with your image. It was hot, alive, and reactive. A line appeared. Reader 2,138,209 has stored a part of the memory. If you tell it wrong, Marika disappears. If you forget, Elara is never free. I whispered into the mirror. Are you listening to me? Are you telling it right? Silence. Then a small voice from the mirror. I just want to listen for fun. The cold wind blew. The mirrors began to crack, and from each one a distorted version of me poured out. A Marika without eyes, a Marika all writing, a Marika without a mouth, screaming only through her stitches, a Marika with Elira's voice, a Marika all ash, no form. I ran. The mirrors shattered, ash filled my eyes. I could no longer see a way out, only the sound of chains, muffled laughter, and knocking inside my head. I saw a narrow passage between two layers of reality. I crawled through. I slid into a pitch-black space where every sound echoed as if being scrutinized. In the middle, a wooden table. On the table, a new diary, nameless, wordless, just one line. This is the original. It can only be written once. After that, you will disappear from all distorted versions. But no one remembers you anymore. I put my hand to the pen. Elira's voice rang out, as soft as a breath. Do you choose to live in falsehood or die in truth? I wrote. Each stroke of ink was a memory torn from my mind. The time I locked Elira's door. The time I laughed when she fell because I hid her pillow. The time I denied that she had screamed in her dreams. The time I rewrote her death as an accident. No one was wrong. On the last page, I wrote, if you're reading this, you're holding me. I am Marika, imperfect, not right, but real. Stop telling lies. Don't make me disappear. I close the book. All the echoes stop. No wind, no ash, no mirror. There is only a chair across from me, and you, the one reading these lines, sitting there. I look you straight in the eye and ask one last question. Can you promise that if you tell, you will tell? If you are the last one, please do not tell. Let the story end with silence. As I finished writing the last line in the red notebook, the original notebook that contained the naked truth, I knew I had reached the limit of my existence as an independent entity. The ash wind stopped blowing. My copies were gone. Elara no longer appeared in the shadow form. There was only me and a path. There was no light at the end of that corridor. No whispers, no chains, no heartbeats. The path led nowhere. It just ended. I looked back at the diary, now empty of names. The first page that had read, Marika 13th Memory, was now blank, not because I had been erased, but because I had voluntarily withdrawn from being remembered. A dim door appeared before me. On it were engraved 3 lines. You have told me enough. You have written the truth. Now you must choose. I knew what that choice meant. On the other side of the door, if I entered, I would become a memory that no one remembered clearly. An old echo rang in my head. You existed, only to be told falsely. Want to keep the truth alive? Walk in silence. I remembered all the journeys I had taken. I remembered the times I was pushed into the maze of mirrors, the ghosts of memories chasing me, the nights when footsteps echoed from the basement where there were no stairs, the clanking of chains like a silent warning. I thought I was the victim, then the narrator. In the end, I was just a misplaced memory. My footsteps lightly touched the gray tile floor. I see an image, a child sitting in a room, the lights dim, his ears straining to listen to this story on some podcast. The child shivers at the sudden knock on the door, then quickly pulls the covers over himself. I see him, you to be exact, who has read this far, and I see what makes me decide. You stopped. You didn't fast forward. You didn't embellish. You didn't turn me into a meme. I just listened. I smile. Maybe. My existence is enough. Just one person who really understands. I look back at the notebook one last time. I pick up my pen and write a line on the last cover. I am the last to write, and I choose to be silent so that what is right can live on. A cold wind rushes in as I approach the door. I hear muffled laughter. I don't know whose it is. Maybe a part of me, the part that once regretted, once panicked, once fled. Now it laughs at its release. The door opens, not to a bright light, just nothingness. And I understand, stepping through it, I will. No longer be present in any retelling, no longer be named, no longer be pitied, no longer be Marika. I will be just a gap in the story, a warning through absence. I turned my head one last time and see you. Your face appears through the surface of the water. I say, don't tell me again if you can't keep me. Don't write me into a pastime. If you really understand, just keep me in silence. I step through. Everything goes dark. No sound, no image, no I. The last whisper. If you're reading this, please understand, you've just kept the last part of a story, and now there's no one left to tell it to. The narrator has chosen to disappear, not to avoid it, but to protect the memory from being distorted. You won't find the name Marika online. You won't see the 13th memory in print. You won't see Elira's image because they are no longer part of our world. They exist in the only space left, your memory. If you see someone asking about this story, don't tell it. If you see another writer trying to rewrite it, stop them. And if one night you hear the rustle of chains in your hallway, don't open the door. Silence may be the bravest act. If you're still here after every tense minute, congratulations. You're braver than most people who've heard this story. But be honest with yourself. Tonight, would you dare to stick your feet out over the edge of the bed? Or would you pull the covers up a little higher, not because you're cold, but because you're nervous? Elara's story may be just an anonymous one, but in the dark, in the invisible silence of the night, how many people have heard the sound of fingernails lightly scratching the wood of their back? How many people have woken up with strange scratches but never told anyone for fear of being called crazy? We're often haunted by the big things: murders, conspiracies, disappearances, mysterious phenomena in distant places. But sometimes, what's stalking you doesn't come from deep woods or long hallways. It comes from right under the bed you're sleeping in. And the scariest thing is, you have no idea when it started or how long it's been there. The lesson isn't don't rent an old house, nor is it install a camera in your bedroom. It's this: there are silences not to be ignored. There are sounds not to be ignored. And there are premonitions not to be laughed at. We live in a world where everything must be documented, but not everything leaves a trace on paper. Some things leave a trace on your skin, on your memories, and on the fears you dare not speak out loud. Some things are best left alone, especially when they're buried in the cold ground, locked in stone, forgotten by the world for decades. But then someone finds them, an iron chest with no name, no lock, no markings. No one knows why it's there, and no one knows why the thing inside is still alive. On the western edge of Montana, where the forests are covered in mist all summer, there's an abandoned cabin that no one dares to go near. It's not on maps. It's not on Google Earth. No one knows who owned it. And the last person who tried to enter never came out. But when a trio of journalism students decided to do a bizarre story about homes forgotten by the world, They chose this place as their starting point, a 3-day trip, cameras full of batteries, backpacks full of food. The idea was clear. They would recount their exploration of an abandoned house to gain online views. Only the camera didn't record what they saw, only the sounds, and those sounds weren't human. One of the three returned in a semi-conscious state. He couldn't remember his name. He couldn't recognize his family. But in his hand, he had a small, crumpled piece of paper written in blood. "We opened what we shouldn't have, and now it's following me home." From there, in the forests of western Montana, people began reporting strange sounds at 3 a.m., erupting laughter, footsteps on the roof, and the creepiest thing of all, a voice calling their name, coming from the basement, even though they didn't have a basement. A theory quickly spread. The thing inside the box wasn't just a physical thing. It is a living memory clinging to consciousness and seeking to multiply, and now it is slowly learning to speak to humans. In the next installment of Darkness Tells, we will take you back to that unnamed cabin. We will let you listen to recordings that were never broadcast, read diary entries that were never published, and most importantly, we will tell you what really happened to that unnamed box. You may be thinking, just don't open it and it will be fine. But the thing is, it never needed anyone to open it. It opened itself, and this time it chose one of you. See you in the next installment of Darkness Tells. We live in a world where everything must be documented, but not everything leaves a trace on paper. Some things leave a trace on your skin, on your memories, and on the fears you dare not speak out loud.